It's finally the big Nintendo Switch 2 episode. Release date, launch lineup, price. This thing's going to be kind of expensive. We'll dig into it all on Next Gen Console Watch right after these messages. Welcome back to Next Gen Console Watch, our show following everything happening with the latest gaming hardware, and there's a lot happening with particular gaming hardware this week. I'm David Hatfield, and this week I'm joined by Sam Claiborn, Jada Griffin, and Bo Moore, and we've got to dig into everything Nintendo Switch 2. Nintendo finally had its big direct today. Pretty much showed all their cards for Nintendo Switch 2. It's coming out very soon, 2 months. June 5th, it's out. And it's going to cost $450 here in the US, and that's just for the console itself. There's a Mario Kart World game. That's the name of the new Mario Kart game. There's a bundle of that goes for $500. So $450 is a price increase of 50% over the base Nintendo Switch model. Let's start there. There's so much to dig into. I think some people have some sticker shock on the price here. I'm not saying it's too expensive for what it is, but I think part of the Nintendo Switch's success was because it's far and away, the cheapest way to get a game console into your house. And I think for a lot of families, when they look at $500 for the game of Mario Kart, I think you're going to have we have a Nintendo Switch at home situation. What do we think?
Counterpoint, it's a smoking deal for Mario Kart, considering that the price of Mario Kart is, what is it, north of $80?
Oh, I think it's $80, right?
$80, yeah.
Yeah, so
for digital copy at least.
Yeah, the digital copy. Yeah, so I mean that's that, and I presume that we're not getting a game card with the bundle, right? So it'll be a digital version of that.
Probably. Yeah.
But it's expensive. We hope that means that it's packing lots of power. We got hints at that today. Mm-hmm. We got hints of what it can do, and we got to see what it looks like. So does that mean we're getting what we're paying for? I kind of have to defer to Bo on that one. What are you thinking, Bo?
I don't know at this point. We do know that it's an NVIDIA chip, so that's been officially confirmed. An NVIDIA chip was inside the Switch 1, and so we now know there is an NVIDIA chip in there. We don't know for certain what that chip is, but it's rumored to be the Tegra T239, which is based on the Ampere architecture, which, to put that in GPU terms, that's the RTX 3000 series or 30 series, however you want to look at it. It's probably going to be on the low end of that, so I would probably put it around the RTX 3050, maybe even a little lower than that. So I don't know. I mean, they made some claims. They said it could do 4K 60 in docked mode, quality mode, at least on Metroid Prime. We'll kind of see what that means. It's definitely going to be doing some upscaling to get to 4K. I honestly think it might struggle at 1080p in handheld for, more demanding games.
Mm-hmm. So we have some other data points here, and Jada, you were mentioning them earlier. Everything's more expensive, right?
Yeah, the accessories are more expensive than they've ever been. The new Pro controller is $80. The Joy-Con, a left and right Joy-Con, that's $90 now. Yeah. If you want the charging grip, like a spare charging grip, if you buy a couple Joy-Cons and then you need a separate of the grip for them to slide into, that's another $35. If your kids lose the strap or a dog chews your cable for the strap, that's $13 for the straps. Camera that they showed off for all their voice chat features is $50. And if you ever need to replace the dock or just want a second dock in the house to move it somewhere, that's $110. Though I'm not surprised.
I love a spare dock, by the way. It's always nice to have a spare dock, so that's crazy.
But I'm not surprised on the pricing for that dock, because I think that dock is going to be doing a lot of the heavy lifting with helping the Switch 2 maintain its performance, because they made a point to show off that beefy fan that's in there to keep the system cool. Mm-hmm. Because, anybody who messes around with PC hardware, if you are overclocking your system, things get hot very quickly, and that quickly degrades your performance. So they need a way of keeping it nice and chill. Now, what this means for third-party manufacturers that during the Switch lifetime released a bunch of miniature docks where you could just USB and HDMI cable plug in, where you didn't actually have to dock in. I don't know what that's going to look like for third-party developers for this moving forward, though.
Yeah, I think that the proprietary dock is going to be pretty much required for at least playing in the best performance modes. You might be able to use just like a USB out to get to just to play on an external screen or a TV. But my assumption would be that if you're using that and not using an official dock with the fan, like you mentioned, you're probably only going to be able to get the performance level of the handheld mode, because what that dock is doing is like you said, it's going to keep the system cooler. And it also means that they can put more power into the system. Whereas on battery, when it's not docked, it's going to be limited by the power limits of that battery output, which will then lower the performance. Whereas in docked mode, you can simply put more power into it, keep it cooler, and that'll get you more performance. And we actually did see that in the trailer for Metroid Prime, the quality and performance mode figures that they gave. They said quality mode 4K 60, performance mode 1080p 120, but in little fine print below it says handheld mode, quality mode 1080p 60, handheld 720p 120.
So I wanted to point out that there's only 7 exclusives announced and 12 cross-platformy type things so far, which are upgrades, right? So that means that only those 7 games are what you are going to be missing out on without a Switch 2. I'm not saying I'm not excited for those. I'm definitely getting one of these, but that means that maybe you have some time until a price drop. However, I'm also saying that a little bit ironically, because I don't think prices are ever dropping again. Like, we're looking at a completely different, import landscape and inflation. Like, all this stuff is happening to make things more expensive. So, this is the state of things. I hope you can save some money on not buying old GameCube games by just subscribing to Nintendo Online.
Yeah. And in the footage that we were just seeing, Nintendo spent a lot of time showcasing some features that are new to maybe Nintendo, but not new to other consoles. They've got game chat, which is just voice chat. There's a microphone built into, I guess it's actually in the Switch itself and in their Pro controller, I believe. And which they are using some cool tech, I think, to like make sure your voice is easy to hear, even if you're in a noisy situation. So that's kind of cool. And they also have this camera peripheral, which is an added $50. But we had a camera on our Xbox 360 that we were using to put our face into Rainbow Six Vegas, back in 2006. So again, I think this is just classic Nintendo being a little bit behind the curve in terms of technology and features. In fact, IGN's own Nintendo podcast is called, ironically, Nintendo Voice Chat for this very reason.
Have to change the name now. Remember, that was the deal.
I know.
You're going to keep that until they do voice chat.
Yep. Rip. Jada, what's sort of like the community sentiment coming out of the Nintendo Direct today? Because I don't think everyone's like super negative on it. I think people are surprised a little bit about the price, but I think people are excited about the system and the launch lineup. Is that true?
Yeah. I mean, I think people are really happy with the games that are announced. I think everybody was like 10 out of 10. This is great, fantastic. And then after the Direct finish and they started putting information up on the site and about the prices, the sticker shock kind of kicked in. They're like, I don't know. There's a lot of people that are saying I don't know if I can do this. I don't know if I can afford this, because it's so much. But there's also a lot of people that are just like, I like my Nintendo consoles. I don't know why people are worked up over it. $450 seems reasonable. So it's kind of all over the place right now, with early reactions for comments. I think people are really excited for Donkey Kong. People are really excited for Mario Kart. I think people are we're hoping for more first party stuff to get revealed. I think people were really hoping we'd see like a Fire Emblem or a Zelda or a Mario.
Mm-hmm.
That's not Mario Kart. I think people are a little let down that those didn't make an appearance, but I think there's still a lot more for Nintendo to showcase throughout the year. With the Switch 1, obviously that big focus was on Zelda Breath of the Wild, and then we got Super Mario Odyssey announced, I believe, later that year, and then it dropped, or like just a couple months later, and then it dropped later that year. So I don't think we're going to see a new 3D Super Mario this year, but I wouldn't put them out on it coming out maybe next year, 2026 for Super Mario. So
here's the launch lineup so far as it stands. I'm going to read through this list. So you got Mario Kart World. That's kind of like their flagship launch game. They have the Switch 2 editions of Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom. The Nintendo GameCube Classics will be available on Nintendo Switch Online. The Nintendo Switch 2 Welcome Tour, which I want to talk about in just a second. Deltarune, Chapters 1, 2, 3, and 4. Split Fiction, Cyberpunk, Street Fighter 6, Konotsugami, Path of the Goddess, Civ 7, Hogwarts Legacy, Bravely Default, Flying Fairy HD Remaster, Yakuza 0, Fortnite, Fast Fusion, Hitman World of Assassination, Nobunaga's Ambition, Awakening Complete Edition, Survival Kids, Rune Factory, Guardians of Azuma, Arcade Archives 2, Ridge Racer, and Puyo Puyo Tetris 2S. So a lot of stuff on there, but I mean, there's old Zelda games, but there's nothing like what Breath of the Wild was at the launch of Switch. So I don't.
Well, Mario Kart is like the Breath of the Wild of Mario Karts, right?
Yeah, it is definitely its glow up moment.
I mean, it's definitely a much more like broad, like mainstream appeal for sure.
Yeah,
but
and
I
I
mean,
want to point out that there's a launch window we're doing here that stretches to Donkey Kong, right? Like that's a month later. We're
That's
fine.
right. Yeah,
That'll be fine.
It's just a month in. Well,
And I don't know what that. I mean, I'm down on that game, but only because it's I wanted a Mario game more. But I think there could be a Mario game this year. But it does look like another like Breath of the Wild type situation where it's like, what are we gonna do in this game? We're gonna be able to deform and dig through every single environment. Like that's another like kind of expansion of dimension. Just like we look at. I think those two. Mario Kart World and that together are kind of Breath of the Wild, like in just the dimensional scope difference that Nintendo's doing. I think that's interesting. I'm not saying they're up to the quality of that game, but in terms of like how do you embiggen the greatest of Nintendo series, that's how you do it.
do you like the idea of an open world Mario Kart?
Do I?
All three of you.
I love it.
Yeah.
I think it's so smart. I mean, I think ever since Burnout Paradise and then going to the Forza Horizon series, I've adored that type of racing, and I like the world building. And like, it also brings me back to Woohoo Island. Remember for Wii Sports Resort? It's just like they built these little like worlds under glass, kind of where they're like miniature worlds, and I really like that stuff. And I like the idea. Like they show this one shot of the carts going over this like glacier at the tip top of a icy peak, and in the distance you can see like the rest of the maps and the tracks. I think it's so cool. I love the world building of any game, and I like the idea of doing it in kart. I have a downside though. I just do it real quick.
What's that?
I think when you use tracks this wide and have this many players, it all looks and feels slow. Unless you're doing a perspective like from far away and showing the cars moving together like from the front of them in like a rewind mode. When they actually show like racing from behind the cart, it just looks like it's a trick of the imagination, right? It's not the game's not slower. It just looks slower because everything around you is wider. It's just a mental trick that making tight courses makes it look faster. And they didn't do that with this. So
yeah, I am more excited for this Mario Kart than I've probably been excited for Mario Kart in I don't know like since Double Dash. I think like. The amount of like characters we've got on display, the different vehicles, the custom costumes, the like new unique characters like the Moo Moo Meadows cow, like I've seen images of a crab racing. There's just it's so ridiculous, and the open world aspect gives me hope that Nintendo's gonna do their open world charm of just like really burying secrets around to go out and just explore and have time looking for those types of things. So I'm very excited for that. I also hope that Mario Kart World does fill that role of Mario Kart 8 Deluxe, where it is that kind of ever-present game on the Switch 2. And I hope that they expand on that to where when they start adding new courses and DLC and such down the road, which because they probably will because they saw success with it in Mario Kart 8 Deluxe, I hope that when they introduce like Link and Zelda or Animal Crossing characters to race on, I hope they bolt on to that world map,
right?
Like areas of Hyrule and whatever Animal Crossing is going to be set in, and Splatsville or Splatoon's location. I hope they do that kind of thing.
Yeah, it could be an open world platform to expand, right? I think that's so exciting. And there's so much like, like showing tracks that go all the way across the map is like a really interesting elimination round that they're doing. But I agree with you that it's about the hidden exploration aspects. Like if there's 100 stunt jumps that you just have to discover yourself, like that's awesome. Like check them off the list. That's exactly what I want in a Mario Kart.
All right, so Bo, at $450, the Switch 2 is $50 more than the base Steam Deck. And of course, alongside the Steam Deck, there's all these other good options for handheld PC gaming. And we know we've got multiple handheld Xboxes coming in the future. So I'm just curious, do you have any sense of like what Nintendo Switch 2's place in the sort of handheld gaming market is going to be?
I don't yet know where it's going to land performance-wise because, again, we haven't tested it and we don't know how truly demanding the games are going to be. But its place is going to be the Nintendo handheld. I mean, Nintendo has always existed as sort of its own thing, and it, if nothing else, has Nintendo exclusives. So that's going to give it a leg up over all the other handhelds, no matter what. It also is the most family friendly. It's the most easy to get into. You know, there are still some hoops you have to jump through to get up and running on a Steam Deck or an ROG Ally, even more so the Windows machines. That is just slightly less easy to do. This in the same argument that can be made for why people like consoles over getting a gaming PC. And Nintendo will kind of always have that. But what it comes down to the performance, that's what we don't know yet. It'll see the interesting thing about it is it's a 1080p screen, whereas the Steam Deck and most of the other machines so far have been 800p, which is basically 720p. And that is going to be actually slightly more demanding. The one thing so far, though, that it will definitely have a leg up is, well, I say definitely. We don't technically know for sure, but given that it's an NVIDIA chip inside, and given that NVIDIA's whole approach to graphics as a whole at this point is using AI and upscaling, it's had DLSS for upscaling since around 2018, I want to say. This will probably be the first handheld to actually have an AI upscaling solution in it. Again, I'm speculating here, but most likely it will use some type of upscaling. And to be clear, it actually in the direct, there was a little bit of fine print down at the bottom that says even if the software doesn't support 4K resolution natively, it is possible to upscale and output at 4K if the television supports it. So we know for certain that it's doing upscaling, and given the NVIDIA chip inside, I would assume that it is DLSS basically doing that upscaling, which is more powerful than what a non-AI based upscaling can do. So it does have that going for it.
I wanted to also point out, like, price and handhelds are have a lot of comparisons right now, and this is a better deal than a lot of seemingly comparable powered systems. Now, comparing it to, yes, the launch Steam Deck is unfavorable. The Steam Deck costs $400. This costs $450, right? Or $500. But that's not a good comparison because the Steam Deck is not as powerful as this. We're talking about what the next Steam Deck will cost. And I don't think that's going to be $400. And there's also several other handhelds right now. Bo could list the names of them. I can hardly remember the names of them. I've played them, they're usually $750, right? So like and what does this do? Yes, it plays Nintendo games. But when I think of the Switch, I also think of it as another thing. It's an indie platform. It is a game where you can play a bunch of great indies. And what do we see for it today? We saw the most important indie game coming out, Silk Song.
Yep.
Right? And there's some others in there, Deltarune and stuff like that. But these are games that, you want to be able to keep up on, the ones that, at Hades also, you want to be able to keep on the ones that have graphical demands. So some indie games do. And so to keep up with that and make this the indie system that you want to play Steam-like games on, and Steam games, it might be the best way to do. It might be the cheapest, best way to play the next generation of those. That's a big deal.
It's a possibility. Like the big thing when factoring in money versus Switch and Steam Deck and ROG Ally and any of those other ones, the Steam does Deck and those other ones do have the benefit of playing your entire Steam library, which is a massive library, which the Switch 2 will grow and get a bigger library over time. But right out the gate, it's not going to have that massive library for people who've already spent years building up their Steam library. So that is, one of the things to also factor in.
It's impressive that Borderlands 4 is coming.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
Doesn't look bad either.
Star Wars Outlaws too.
Great game.
Yeah.
I like the idea for Borderlands and Metroid Prime using the mouse controller for aiming and such. But I'm very very cautiously optimistic about it because it's all going to depend on the tech that's in there for the mouse and how good it is at reading different surfaces. Because I don't know about you guys, but most of the time when I'm playing my Switch, if I'm playing it in docked mode, I'm kind of laying back on the couch. I'm not like sitting forward on my desk or table playing it, which means I need to have a plank of something that's flat that has a good surface for playing that I need to invest and now put on my couch next to my couch, or I have to sit forward on my coffee table and play. And I just don't think that's going to be as comfortable. So I'm cautiously optimistic about it.
You know where I envision myself using the Joy-Cons as a mouse is on my tray table in my airplane seat.
Yep.
That's exactly
it's perfect for that. It's almost like it was made for that.
Yeah,
you know?
exactly.
So I think Civ is another example of this this inflection point for price. Like Civ, I played it on Steam Deck. I liked it. I didn't use any type of mouse controls, and it was a super pain with the using a controller to play that game. That game has all kinds of UI problems anyway. They're slowly getting fixed. Even if I play this without the mouse controls or anything, I suspect the Switch 2 is going to run it a lot better than the Steam Deck ran it. And what is my option to also get it to run that well? Something that costs $200 to $300 more than the Switch. You see where this is going? Like it is cheaper than the comparisons. It's sticker shock because Nintendo.
Something else about the mouse to me though is that like on the one hand, it feels a bit like the touchpads that Valve put into the Steam Deck in that they made this effort that like you can play any PC game, even the ones that require mouse controls. Right. So on that side, that feels quite nice. But when I was watching particularly the Mario Party Jamboree section of the Direct, every game that they showed showcasing the mouse controls, all I could think was this just looks like a worse version of the Wiimote controls, where I would rather just point the remote at the screen and aim rather than go switching and, like you said, Jada, leaning forward and finding a surface and using that to rub it around on the table. I'd rather just point at the screen and aim. Like that would be way better.
Yep.
Sam, I thought it was amusing that Hitman World of Assassination is coming because you played Hitman 3 on Switch as a streaming game, as a cloud game. Right. But now it's coming natively. I just think
hopefully won't be a 3-second delay and everything.
Yeah,
or whatever it is.
Exactly.
What a great game though. I mean, even though I played it streaming, it's really good. And the fact that they're working on a Bond, if that's an assassination based game,
I know.
What?
I can't believe
that's the best game.
I can't believe they mentioned that game in the Nintendo Direct today. Like it's been forever since we've gotten any information on that game, and they were like, "Oh yeah, we're also still making that Bond game."
Yep,
that was good.
I mean, it's also paramount to the FromSoft just coming out like, "Hey, here comes Duskborn," and it's a Switch exclusive right on the right after Bloodborne having its 10th anniversary and nobody getting anything.
Yeah.
So. This a lot of people held some things for this Direct.
Yeah, that was a weird one because they also announced Elden Ring is coming to Switch, and like that's cool. But I would imagine Elden Ring Night Rain could run on the Switch. So instead of that, they have a whole different multiplayer focused.
Very strange.
Game. Yeah, it's just a strange situation.
And why are they working on two of these at the same? The whole thing is bizarre, but the fact that it has blood in it is also a huge deal. But also Elden Ring coming to the system is great. Like that's super cool.
It is.
Cyberpunk, man.
Okay, like there's so much to dig into. We'll be covering Switch 2, for weeks, months to come now. But just like now that the dust has settled on the Direct, just overall, how are you feeling about the Nintendo Switch 2? Each of you. Let's start with Jada.
Yeah, I mean, I'm all in. I was all in before they announced the price and showed the Direct, just because I like my Nintendo games. I like my Nintendo franchises. Today's Direct did a solid enough job to keep me in that boat of being all in for the console day one. So, plus you're getting a new 3D Donkey Kong game. I can't be mad at that. I love Donkey Kong 64. So I'm very excited to see where this one goes. And it looks like it's done by the Mario Odyssey team. I have no confirmation on that yet, but if so, we're all in for a good time on that.
Do we think that the follow-up to Mario Odyssey, the next 3D Mario game, is still like not that far away? There are rumors
I
that's
think
a big
this is not that team working on it. I think it is the fall game.
Okay.
That's Jada and I just differ on our predictions there.
Okay. Gotcha.
But she also wants Donkey Kong and I don't, so we differ on that too.
Bo, what are your current?
Well, some of us are people of culture.
Yeah,
That's all
exactly.
I'll say.
Bo, overall, how are you feeling about the Nintendo Switch 2 right now?
Yeah, I was pretty much likely going to be a day one purchase no matter what. Like I love Mario Kart. I think that's just always a great time. And like we were saying, I think that'll last through the cycle, the entire time that the system exists. I love my Nintendo games. You know, I'm going to have one of these systems, but I have to say, like, the fact that the Steam Deck exists and that's my, you know, I love the Switch, despite the fact that I just said that I love my Nintendo games. Until the Steam Deck came out, I primarily used it as an indie machine. It was where I played Slay the Spire. It was where I played
There you go.
Into the Breach and a whole bunch of these great indie games that were known as PC games, but they played fantastically on handheld. And so the question for me is whether I'm going to stay with my Steam Deck for those type games or move over to the Switch 2. At this point, I might stick with the Steam Deck because the ergonomics on it are probably a lot better. Until, you know, I'm sure though we'll see some third party, maybe first party, I don't know, they certainly haven't announced it, but I'd love to see the, you know, some really nice grip controllers that give it a much better feeling, because I have pretty large hands, and after playing Steam Deck a lot, going back to Switch for handheld, it just feels so small and cramped.
Yep, I have to agree with that. Sam, final thoughts.
Yeah, so I think this is the best version of any console announcement we've gotten since E3 went away. So I think this is, you know, ever since we went digital and we have to watch an hour-long stream of something, even though it broke right in the middle of it for US viewers. This was the best I've ever seen. I think it had this great, you know, amount of the information we want to see about the system and stuff like that. But right in the middle of it, they just show, you know, 2 seconds of the most anticipated game, period, Hollow Knight, as almost like a troll. I love that. And then what have you seen in comments for 10 years and counting now on every stream that Sony has ever done? Where's Bloodborne?
Silksong. Oh, that too.
Bloodborne.
Yeah, I got you there, right?
Another.
Because it could be one or the other. And both of them were in this. That is unbelievable. And then on top of that, you know, I can just list all the things I'm excited about from this stream. Plus Metroid's coming out. We already knew about the biggest game, and it's a huge game, and that's just sitting there in the wings. I can't think of a better way to hype people up about so that's like the cultural value of this. And of course, personally, I love digging into these as a person, you know, that covers games and a person that enjoys and plays games. Everything feeling new and shiny, and like it's a system where you're like, oh, I don't want to hurt this for a year, you know. And then after that, you're just throwing your Switch across the room, or it's under the couch or whatever. Like I love that feeling, that fresh console treat it right feeling. So
how many times have you found your Switch underneath your couch, Sam?
Yeah, well, you know, I have a large kitten now, and he's good at swatting.
I'm excited for the Switch 2. I think the Switch 1 has been such a phenomenal success for Nintendo. Just to remind everyone, since it launched in 2017, Nintendo has made more money in this time period than it made from 2017 to 1985. That's how big of a success the Nintendo Switch has been. Yeah. A lot of people bought the system. A lot of people bought multiple units for their household, and everyone who buys it buys a lot of games for it. And a large part of that is because it has a cheaper entry point compared to competitors. $300 was nice. I just think $500 is like the lowest point to get in with Mario Kart. Is just going to be a tougher sell. But I'm still excited for it. Obviously, I'm going to get it. And I should point out that maybe the biggest takeaway is that I was watching the Direct with my 5-year-old son, who plays the Switch a lot more than me today. And halfway through, he goes, "Daddy, we should just throw away the Switch 1, right?" So, so maybe that tells us all that we need to know. Dear viewers, we want to know, what Nintendo Switch 2 game are you looking forward to the most? Mario Kart World, Donkey Kong Bonanza, Hollow Knight, Silksong, Dusk Blood. Make sure to vote at IGN.com the day this episode goes live, and we'll share the results with you next week. And now it's time for our spiels. This episode of Next Gen Console Watch was produced by yours truly, Daemon Hatfield and Jobert Atienza. Technical direction is by Jobert Atienza, with technical production by Marhyan, Franzen, and Amir Rakib. Audio engineering is handled by Amir Rakib. Post-production editing is by Jobert Atienza, and graphic design is by Justin Vachon. Next Gen Console Watch is an IGN production and part of the Geek Media Network. Oh, I'm looking at, I don't know why I'm letting you know about this. There's a note in here that GameScoop is moving record days to Tuesday. So, yeah, if any GameScoop fans are watching this, just the heads up about that. Also want to let you know that IGN Live is officially returning to LA this year. The event will take place June 7th through the 8th and will feature tons of playable games on PCs, consoles, and handhelds, celebrity panels and interviews, trailer reveals, giveaways, and so much more. Tickets are on sale now, so head over to IGN.com/live and scoop them up for early bird pricing. All right, and that's going to do it.
Bring your Switch 2s.
And bring your Switch 2s. Yeah, since it's out June 7th, that confirms you will be able to play your Nintendo Switch 2 while you travel to IGN Live from wherever you are in the world. What a time to be alive. Thank you so much to Sam, Jada, and Bo. Thank you to everyone working behind the scenes to make this episode possible. That's going to do it for this edition of Next Gen Console Watch. My name is Daemon. We'll be back next week with lots more Switch 2 news, so please be excited. We'll see you then.